Good morning everybody, welcome to IndyCar on, what is it today, the 11th is it? Oh, hold on a little second here, we get this right. Yep, the 11th of June. On today's news, we've got three items. First one is that the defence spending in Scotland, or charges for defence spending in Scotland, have reached over 10% of our gross domestic product. I'll return to that story in a moment. In the second story today, we look at why Nicola Sturgeon has gone to visit the top European leaders today to give an address to them and to a think tank in Europe. And finally, we look at a gigantic breakthrough made by Glasgow University Scientists to solve the problem of recharging electric cars using conventional petrol stations and petrol pumps. So we'll come back to that in a moment. But first, the news comes today from Business for Scotland, basically a business think tank which looks at the way Scotland is managed from a business perspective and from a financial viewpoint. And they issued a report today which showed that the United Kingdom had charged Scottish taxpayers over £15 billion for defence expenses, for expenditure on defence services for Scotland. Now, if you think about that for a moment, Scotland's annual tax revenues come to somewhere in the region of 60 billion. So we're looking at a quarter of the tax take in Scotland being wasted on charges for the UK's defence expenditure. Now, if you look around you in Scotland, can you see any defence infrastructure anywhere in your neighbourhood that makes you want to spend almost a quarter of Scotland's taxation on defence? Well, the answer obviously is no. The only real infrastructure in Scotland for defence are a couple of airfields, a couple of big barracks, and of course nuclear submarines. Now, the nuclear submarines aside, they don't actually cost £15 billion every 5 years to service. That's a bit of a myth. But when you do the arithmetic, over the past 5 years, every man, woman and child in Scotland has been charged over £5,500 a year for their defence. And that's including babies and school children. I'm not just talking about voting age adults here. I'm talking about every man, woman and child in Scotland is being charged over £5,500 a year by the UK government for our defence. There's not a single ship around the Scottish coastline protecting our oil fields. We've had Russian destroyers sailing to within 10 miles of Leith docks, unchallenged by the British Navy, where people have had to phone up the Ministry of Defence from their mobile phones in Leith docks to say that a Russian destroyer is within firing range of our capital city. And yet we're charged £15 billion over the last 5 years. So something badly wrong when Scottish people are being unfairly taxed, far more than any other country in the world for our defence. Now, to be a member of NATO, you have to spend at least 2% of gross domestic product on military hardware and infrastructure. And in Scotland, that figure is actually 10%. We are paying 5 times more than our population demands. To be in NATO, we're actually 5 times over the limit for military spending. Now, why is that? Well, there is no reason for that other than it's handy for the British government to dump as much military spending on the Scottish taxpayer as possible, because it alleviates the tax burden on the English voters, who basically have all the military bases in their southern coastlines and western coastlines. So, not a good situation. Business for Scotland's brought it to light today. Scotland is being unfairly charged for defence which it doesn't get, basically. We're being charged a fee for something that we don't get. The only thing that Scotland gets is ballistic missile submarines in Faslane, which are so close to our centres of population that if there's an accident, we would all be wiped out. Okay, so moving on to the second story now, we have Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, is visiting Michel Barnier, sorry, get this right, Jean-Claude Juncker, Donald Tusk, all the big hitters of the European Union, the top men in Europe. Why is she there? Well, she is there to deliver a message to the top men in Europe, also the top Brexit negotiators, that Scotland as a country rejects Brexit completely. All of the people of Scotland, 62% of us voted against Brexit. We want to stay in the European Union, we want to stay inside the single market and inside the customs union, at the very least. And she has gone to deliver that message today to a think tank in the European Union. Now, while she is there, I don't know what else she will be saying, but I can probably guess that there are going to be a lot of other discussions about what will happen when Scotland votes to become independent and how the European Union would support us in that situation, because it's obvious that Nicola Sturgeon is not just going over there to say Scotland rejects Brexit. That much is obvious. She's going over there to talk to these leaders about what will happen once Scotland votes to leave the UK. We need to know what the Europeans will do and how they will respond to us if we have a proper vote on independence and we win it. If we have a legal, a transparent and internationally recognised referendum or any other kind of vote, including general election incidentally, which puts beyond doubt the fact that the Scots do not any longer wish to be in union with England if Brexit is going to go ahead. There was a poll in the evening was it the Evening Times? I'll remember the name of the paper in a minute. Dundee newspaper had a poll on independence, and recently the figure shot up from 72% of people wanting independence if there's a hard Brexit to 75% of people wanting independence if there's a hard Brexit. So the mood of the nation has changed substantially in the last few months. Brexit has changed the rules. It's moved the goalposts completely, and rather than independence becoming something which we are having to fight for, it is more a case of it's now become a necessity. If Scotland is going to save itself from the economic ruin that Brexit is going to bring, then we need to extricate ourselves from this current union with England so that we can make our own decisions and we can negotiate our own path in Europe in any way that we like. So that's what's happening at the moment in Brussels. Now, the other thing that made the news nowhere today, except in one or two small articles, mostly in specialist, either scientific or energy magazines, but a big breakthrough has been made by Glasgow University, one which I think is worth shouting from the rooftops. One of the biggest problems of introducing electric cars anywhere at the moment is the fact that they're driven by batteries. And the batteries need to be recharged every several hundred miles. The problem is, to recharge the batteries takes maybe 45 minutes, 2 hours, sometimes longer, depending on how you charge them. So it takes a long time to charge an existing battery-powered vehicle. So these lithium batteries, which hold a tremendous amount of energy, are very slow to fill up. Glasgow scientists have come up with a brilliant new idea, which is called a liquid battery. So instead of having a battery in your electric car, you have a tank into which is poured this liquid. The liquid contains what's known as a metal oxide, sometimes referred to as a kind of super rust. And in this liquid is this metallic oxide, and it is pre-charged with electrical charge. So in other words, this is like electric soup, this stuff. This is a liquid which is already pre-charged with electrons. It's pumped into your tank in much the same way as petrol is. And the charge from this liquid is simply taken straight out through electrodes and into the motor. So you've got a liquid battery that can be changed over within minutes. So unlike petrol, which would be sort of sucked into the engine and burnt away until the tank was empty, this liquid remains in the tank even once it's spent. So you would go to a petrol station where you would plug in a nozzle into your liquid tank, which would pump out the spent liquid, and then another pump would pump in the freshly charged liquid. The idea being that this would take somewhere in the region of 5 minutes to achieve, rather than the 45 minutes or an hour it would take to charge an electric battery. This is a game-changing technology for the industry of electric vehicles, because no no longer will a battery be needed. It will simply be a large tank, just like the petrol tank in a car, only the fuel this time is an electrically charged liquid. A very clever idea. It's already working at the experimental level, and the scientists at Glasgow University are scaling it up. And so far, all the indications are good. All the tests they have run have been positive. It looks like it's going to work. A few years down the line, batteries may be obsolete because of this invention. And if the Glasgow scientists have done what I think they have, and the university has patented this process, not only will it revolutionise electric motoring everywhere on the planet, it will make millions and millions of dollars for that Glasgow University. That could be not only a game changer for electric vehicles, but also for Glasgow University as a money-making venture. The possibilities for this invention are absolutely astronomical. The things you could use this for are incredible. We could put this into aircraft as well. The idea of fueling an aircraft with an electric liquid battery would be a fantastic idea. Batteries traditionally are usually quite heavy things, and because it takes a long time to charge them, there's always this downtime. No matter what you do, it takes ages to charge up a battery. So having a pre-charged electric liquid like this would be fantastic. It would also create a new industry, manufacturing and charging the liquid, and then taking it in tankers to existing petrol stations, which can be modified so that they are old-fashioned petrol tanks can be used to contain this liquid. And not only that, but the infrastructure changes are such that existing petrol stations could continue to operate as well as using the liquid, the electric liquid pumps as well. So a changeover period would be smoother, and the length of time needed to recharge the car would be a lot lower, and it would almost be like driving a petrol car. So this is a tremendous new invention, and I think congratulations should be passed along to the science team at Glasgow University for what is a groundbreaking idea. So basically that's it for today, but we're looking at, as I say, three things. Scotland being vastly overcharged for its defence by the UK Ministry of Defence at £3 billion a year for basically nothing that we get, and everybody is paying for it. And as I say, it works out at approximately £5,500 for every single inhabitant of Scotland, including babies. And that is something which we shouldn't accept. Why should we pay 5 times more for defence than anybody else in the UK? It just seems punitive. We're being punished. Again, we are being forced to carry the can for the rest of the UK's warmongering. Something which, after independence, we may not need much in the way of defence, because the only real people we'd have to defend our assets against might be our nearest neighbours. Our oil fields and our gas fields and our wind energy farms and our tidal arrays would need to be protected by some kind of domestic coast guard. But we don't really need nuclear defences. I mean, who is threatening a small country like Scotland with being taken over? The Russians are not interested. The Americans are only interested in our health service. They're more interested in taking over England. But there's nobody threatening Scotland. And if Scotland took a neutral political stance in the world, like the Republic of Ireland and like Switzerland, we would have no enemies. Therefore, no need for a vast spend on defence. We certainly don't need nuclear weapons. And with Nicola Sturgeon in Europe today, I think this shows us that the Scottish Government is preparing the way with the European Union to accept Scotland back into Europe after we've voted for our independence. That's it for today. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great day. And I will be presenting Scotland at 7 this week, as far as I know, on Thursday evening, but I'll talk to you more about that later. Bye bye now.